There's a certain group of vehicles that over the course of their existence have been dubbed the most reliable forms of transportation that anyone could ever ask for. And while that might be more of a pertinent factor to the everyday buyer, well, to enthusiasts like myself and others, we don't just want our cars to last. We want something that tugs at the very essence of our emotions, that makes us feel planted and connected on everything from a back road blast all the way down to our daily commute. And you're probably looking at what I'm standing with here and thinking, there is no way that an ordinary Toyota Camry like this could possibly fit any form of that description. And to a degree, most of you are probably right. But you'll quickly realize that the aim of this particular car that I'm standing with isn't so much to make you feel like a driver, it's more so to give you that visual shock when you realize that this car has a bit of a dark side to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so from my perspective, you guys are seeing it here. It is the 2026 Toyota Camry. To be honest with you, it feels like it's been way too long since I've been behind the wheel of one of these, even though I think it was about a year ago or so that I first got to drive this new generation Camry for the first time. The one I drove previously was an XLE, or the Extra Luxury Edition, as I like to call it, and it focused a little bit more on the comforting side of what the Camry has. But this one, this is a complete polar opposite, now carrying a brand new name for 2026. You may be thinking, well, there were already 4 great trims with the Camry. I mean, you had the LE, the SE, the XLE, and the XSE. What could possibly be better than any of those? Well, it all goes back to what I was saying before, because, well, remember how I said that this particular car has a bit of a dark side to it? Well, it's not because this car has some sort of massive engine transplant in place of Toyota's new 5th generation hybrid system. It's a new name, and it's called the Nightshade. And you're probably thinking to yourself already, ooh, Nightshade, that sounds serious and sinister and much darker than just SE or XSE or XLE or any other trim level in the Camry lineup. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but the Nightshade really isn't anything any more special than a regular Camry SE. Sure, it might look a little bit different, and we'll get to why that is here a little bit later, but under the skin, this is essentially a Camry SE, like I just mentioned. Now, the SE isn't a bad car to start with, and quite frankly, it's still pretty affordable even in today's market. The base SE front-wheel drive and the Nightshade both share the same price tag. You want low-level front-wheel drive, less horsepower, more fuel efficiency, you're going to be spending right around $31,000, which again, isn't awful, especially considering all you get as standard. But start adding in options, even things like all-wheel drive like on this car, which ups the power to 232 total system horsepower and a combined output of 46 miles per gallon, well, that's when things start to rise upwards a little bit. Now, the SE and Nightshade all-wheel drive base price sits around $33,000. Still not bad, you might say. Well, throw in a few options like what I have on my press car here, and it climbs pretty quick. This one is sitting just under $39,000, which is quite a sizable chunk out of anybody's book. But like I said, for that, you do get more power. You might lose a little bit in efficiency, but what that adds up to, though, is a little bit more of a spirited driving experience than you might expect. But before we even get into that, there is one thing that is bugging me, actually a couple of things that are bugging me right off the bat, aside from the fact that we've got a person in front of us with their blinker on that's, well, they just shut it off, but we're literally driving straight with their blinker on. But the first thing about this car that annoys me a little bit is the road noise. We're on some slightly larger wheels and tires here, which does mean that you can hear a lot more of the road, even when you're in electric mode. Now, if you're driving, 20 miles an hour through a park like I was earlier, it can be perfectly quiet and completely docile. But start getting it up to, 40, 50 miles an hour, well, as you can hear, it is a little bit more noisy in here than I would like. The other thing that's bugging me is the seats. Being the Sports Edition seats, and we'll talk about what exactly composes these seats a little bit later, well, they are a little bit more on the firmer side. I can definitely feel some kind of unwanted pressure in my lower back and even around kind of my legs/rear end section. These seats do feel a little bit more firm than I would like. Now, I don't just put that down to the fact that this particular car is showing 660 miles on the odometer, so it's still pretty much fresh out of the box. But I also put that down to this car isn't focused solely on comfort. So if you're expecting this to be the most docile, comforting Camry you could ever drive, well, this ain't gonna be it. But if you're somebody who likes a little bit more something spirited and doesn't exactly care about getting up to that 46 mpg combined, well, you can drive this car in a little bit more of a spirited fashion. You just reach down, knock the eCVT into sport mode, and you can put this car into its own separate sport mode, knock it down a couple gears, and you do get a little bit of fireworks. But even if you leave this car in drive and keep it in its sportiest setting, you do feel that this car has a little bit more to give than just your average Toyota Camry. First of all, I can feel like the throttle pedal is a little bit sharper. It feels just a teeny bit more responsive. You can feel the steering has now weighted up a good bit. Now, I'm not saying it's like a GR86, for example, but when you turn into a corner, you definitely feel it communicating back towards you a lot more. Now, it's not going to snap the wheel out of your hands, and it definitely has a good bit more softness. I mean, it's a Toyota Camry. What do you expect? But if you are somebody who likes to, give this car a little bit more of that show it who's boss kind of feeling, well, it can reward you. What I think this car is best meant for is when you put it in economy mode, you let it just settle down, and even without trying to hypermile it or anything, you just let it settle down to a cruise. Just relax and just enjoy the drive, even if it might not be completely enjoyable. Again, now getting up to this kind of freeway speed, and now you can hear, yeah, a bit louder in here than I would like, but all the same, I mean, still plenty usable no matter how you want to drive it. But when you finally settle this car down to a cruise, this is where just the Camry across the board starts to become a little bit more like what people expect it to be. I mean, it's calm, it's quiet, I don't have to shout even as the engine kicks over from electric into internal combustion mode. I mean, it is actually very sensible. The only thing that if you drive a car like this, or the XSE, or even just a plain SE, for example, that you'll feel is you can definitely feel just about everything in the road. Every little crevice, undulation, anything, you will definitely feel it a lot more in one of these. Now, again, if you're like in an LE or an XLE, that's a different story. And if you want to learn more about that, go watch the video I did on it previously. But from where I'm sitting, I would be happy to drive one of these. Would I do a long road trip in it, considering the comfort level of the seats, the road noise, and things like that? Probably not. But this car isn't just about how it drives. The Nightshade trim really comes into its own when you finally pull over and take a look at it. Okay, sure, so the Camry isn't the fastest thing on four wheels, and it's not even the most efficient out of all of today's modern hybrids. However, within the dwindling midsize sedan segment, I'd be almost willing to put money on the fact that I truly believe this is one of the more attractive options you can buy right now. Now, there is a bit of a caveat to that. Well, actually two, if you think about it. The first one is that it has to be in the right spec, and this one here is gorgeous. I love the optional supersonic red paintwork mixed with the voluminous amounts of gloss and matte black trim that you get thanks to the Nightshade trim. The other caveat is, though, that after the new Prius came out in 2023, the Camry, and now almost every single other Toyota model on the market, hybrid or not, all look exactly the same. I know there are some subtle differences and even some greater ones in terms of size, in terms of what category they're in, etc. But take, for example, the new RAV4. It literally looks like they took this new Camry front end and just put it in Photoshop and made it a bit taller. So that does detract away from, I guess, the specialty of how Toyotas are feeling nowadays, because it wasn't all that long ago that every Toyota model had its own unique identity, and I don't really want to embellish on that too much. But you look at this one here and you've got these thin little nostrils in this slit part here in the top of the grille. The lower grille is quite large, even though it's not all open deep inside of there. You've got the SE trims and even the Nightshade trims, little black canards there on the front. You've got the blacked out air skirts in the upper corners. You've even got a blacked out sort of finish to the partial LED headlights. Now, this being the SE, yes, the high beams, the low beams, those are LED, and you still get auto high beam assist as well, but the turn signals, both front and rear, are sadly incandescent. So, I mean, they work, they do their job, but it would have been nice to see full LED headlights, especially when you're spending almost 40 grand on this particular car as it sits. But behind all of this, and even behind the blacked out badges, surprise, surprise, another blacked out treatment, this car has Toyota's full safety sense 3.0. And I actually tried this thing out earlier, though it wasn't even by my own doing, because I had someone's dog run out in the road in front of me, and before I could even lift my foot off the gas and hit the brake, this car smacked on the brakes for me using the pedestrian detection. Now, you still get adaptive radar cruise, forward collision warning, basically everything you could ever want. But it was amazing to think that this car can react so quickly, even though I will admit I don't quite trust every automotive computer there ever is. Now, being an all-new model, you might expect this new Camry to be a little bit bigger than its outgoing predecessor. And you would be right, but it's definitely not the biggest growth spurt you'll ever find really in any category. This car is 193.5 inches long, which means, to be specific, it is 0.8 of an inch longer at its maximum than the outgoing generation. So unlike some cars which just blow up like balloons in every dimension, this one, a little more subtle than that. The one thing that's not as subtle, aside from the fact that they've changed the front, the rear, and just about everything else about it, is that it looks so much more sleek. I love how the nose slopes away in a more aerodynamic fashion. The rear, going from the roofline all the way down towards the bottom of the deck lid, it really does look like it doesn't quite have a sport back or a lift back look, but it's more of a smoother appeal and a more smoother transition from the rear glass down to the trunk. Now, of course, with a side profile, you have to talk about the real eye candy, which are the wheels. Now, the Nightshade, of course, in obvious fashion, gets matte black 19-inch alloy wheels. Now, they are wrapped in 235 40-section Bridgestone all-season tires. To be honest with you, there is one little thing that bugs me, and you heard about it on the test drive. With such low-profile tires and such big wheels, it isn't the ride that's affected, it's the road noise. So would I say that these are the best option if you want the quietest ride out of a Camry? Not really. Now, it should come as no surprise to anyone that when you start factoring in the options on either the SE or the Nightshade trim, well, that's when the picture gets a little more clear as to why even this low to mid-level trim starts to get as expensive as it does. But before we get into all the little pricing details, the blackness theme does continue the further you go down the car. So you have blacked out mirrors with LED turn signals. This particular car has blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, and it even has blacked out door handles, which literally look exactly the same as the ones on the 2018 through 2024. But about that pricing, if you want things like a standard size power tilting and sliding sunroof, no panoramic, no giant big display of glass up here on your Camry's roof, well, that's almost $900 by itself. If you want things like Toyota's smart keyless access with the touchpads for entering and exiting the vehicle just on the front doors here, well, that's almost $600, as part of the convenience package. Now, I am happy to see that Toyota is still giving us a little bit of a nicer key fob, especially because now it has the Camry name on the back of it, so you don't confuse it with, say, the key to your neighbor's Highlander. But apart from that, it does still have every other feature you want. Lock, unlock, trunk, panic, even the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom. And if you want to get in or out of the car, it works like you would expect. You put your hand in the door handle, the car opens, and if you want to lock it, you just touch your finger to the front edge and... Now, if we were talking about a normal Camry of any other variety other than an SE, a Nightshade, or even an XSE, I would be coming around to this car's rear end and saying, well, you know, it looks a heck of a lot better than the 2018 did, in my personal opinion. And Toyota has done a pretty good job of smartening things up as well. It's a little more curvy, it looks a bit more modern. There's not a whole lot of tech on this particular one other than a backup camera and not even any rear park assist. But there is plenty of blackness still to be had, from the subtle black lip spoiler, black badges everywhere, and even the gloss black diffuser with its relocated exhaust tip. Now, unfortunately, there are no true dual exhausts on this car anymore, which kind of makes me sad. It would have been nice to have at least seen that, even though there is no V6 Camry anymore. But all the same, the taillights have smartened up a bit, and I will continue to maintain that they look like a modernized version of a 10th generation Honda Accord, or perhaps even a Subaru Legacy of roughly the same generation. But apart from that, I mean, there really is not much to be had back here in terms of visual appeal on the Camry's rear end. What really is, I guess, even appealing at all is when you find the trunk latch, me just fiddling around back here, and look inside the trunk to reveal the fact that there's not really any difference in cargo volume either. There's 15.1 cubic feet of cargo space back here, and well, I mean, it's convenient. It's definitely got more than enough room for a few suitcases. You can fold the back seats down 60-40, but then the best surprise of all is looking underneath the floor mat and revealing not only a full toolkit, but a compact spare tire. So no more worries about sitting on the side of the road on a hope and a prayer and a fix-a-flat kit to get you home, should you unfortunately find yourself in a bit of a less than ideal situation. Now, whether you call this car by its actual trim level name or you just see it as a sports edition that's had a few little pieces of black jewelry pasted on it, either way, as nice as it is to look at from the outside, especially in the spec that we've got here today, when you're in it, it feels like Toyota didn't quite skimp on all the essentials here. I say quite because, well, like I was saying earlier, if you feel that there's certain things that are even more essential to you for your needs, wants, etc., well, yeah, you better be prepared to add on to that MSRP from the get-go. So you want things like heated sport fabric and soft tech seats, let alone a heated steering wheel. Pay up an extra $500 and you've got the cold weather package, and both of those options are now available. You want things like a bigger infotainment screen, up from 8 inches now to 12.3. Well, that's an extra $750. Now, going back to the steering wheel, the first little thing I'm not a fan of are the paddle shifters. Now, I'm not saying I don't like paddles, but first of all, considering they're connected to an eCVT, which is basically, again, just an electric motor wedged in between the transmission and that 4-cylinder engine up front, well, it's also down to the fact that they kind of sound a bit, you know, cheap gaming keyboard kind of click, if you ask me. But on the flip side, I love how Toyota has stacked all the safety features and essentials on the steering wheel vertically instead of across the top spokes. Now, you still get a good few accessories aside from your radio functions, voice command, your Toyota Assistant, and so on. But for the command functions for your digital gauge cluster, you've got the little arrow pad and even some Bluetooth controls on the left-hand side. On the right, the majority of which, Toyota Safety Sense. Now, the one cool thing I do like about the Safety Sense is that you can toggle back and forth between adaptive cruise control and regular cruise control using the mode button on the right-hand side of the steering wheel. Now, don't confuse that with the mode button down at the bottom. That's more of a radio function, which, speaking of, like I said, This particular example has had the upgraded infotainment system put in. Now, I don't mind the screen because aside from the fact it can be a huge fingerprint magnet and the fact it only has one dial with the volume and power knob over here on the left, it does contain Toyota's newest Connect telematics. It again has wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay, and that is a huge upgrade again from an 8-inch screen that you get in the standard SE or standard Nightshade. Now, within all of that, there is one thing that some people might want to try to upgrade as well, and that's whether or not you get the upgraded sound system. Now, in this car, I have not been told that this is an upgraded sound system, even though it sounds like it. So my best guess, as well as most of yours, is that this still has the 6-speaker factory branded audio system. And you know, to be honest with you, for only 6 speakers, it sounds like it has about 10. And if you're still not convinced that Toyota didn't skimp on all the basics here, well, just look below the screen. You have a dual zone climate control. I also do like the fact that they're almost like piano style keys. You actually have to push down or toggle them in some form or fashion. They're not just a button that you push, which that would have been nice enough, but still it's nice to have a little something extra every once in a while, right? You have 2 USB-Cs underneath that and one USB-A, if that isn't tongue-tying enough. And you also even have a wireless charger. Now, remember how I was saying that there is a little bit of the older generation in here? Take a look at the shifter, for example. The shift knob, the shift gates, even the drive modes here and your EV modes and whatnot basically look like they were ripped right out of the prior generation Camry. Now, the one good thing I am happy about is, being a guy who likes to drink a lot of water and electrolytes, they don't always come in the smallest bottles. But good news, those will fit right in here all the same. So it's convenient, it's comfortable, it has all the tech you need, even if you have to pay a little bit extra for it. And honestly, again, it's a very well-built and well-thought-out interior, even if it isn't the most luxurious one. Now, if you're somebody who prefers a little bit more of a rearward experience, shall we say, welcome yet again to the benefit of a mid-size sedan. Now, it isn't exactly going to work as a crossover replacement, nor necessarily is it going to be the best thing to act as a limo. However, at right around, if not a little over 6 feet tall, again, it just depends on what the doctor says, you can see I have plenty of room between my knees and the back of my seat in its current driving position. And this doesn't have memory seats, so that seat is exactly where I would have it while I'm driving the car. You actually have 2 map pockets back here as well, so one on each side, so Toyota didn't skimp on that either. You also have one USB-C and one USB-A port at the bottom of the center console here. Now, I wouldn't say it's the most tech-laden rear seat that I've ever seen. However, I still do have quite a sizable amount of headroom. I can lean back and actually make myself comfortable. Even better when you pull down the center armrest and you have a couple of cup holders right here. But the one thing I would say, at least about the Sports Edition, the Nightshade, and even the Extreme Sports Edition, or XSE, is that these seats, and I said this on the test drive earlier, and I'll say it again, these seats are a bit too firm for me. I don't really see myself as sitting in the back seat of this car for a long period of time, because it's not so much that my back is gonna start hurting, it's more so that I just feel they don't have the cushiness that I'm expecting. But then again, it's not a Lexus, so I mean, what more should you expect from one of the best-selling mainstream midsize sedans on the market? Well, everyone, the sun has gone away and our time is now up with the 2026 Toyota Camry Nightshade. Now, here's the thing. Would I say that this is the best buy for a lower-end Camry, especially for those who are a little bit more visually pleased? Well, yeah, in a way. It definitely doesn't look like your neighbor's Camry, even though, like I just said a moment ago, it looks like a Camry SE that's just had some fancy black jewelry added to it. But if you are the sort of person who likes to look good but still be efficient and still know that you've got Toyota's bulletproof reliability underneath you, I mean, what more could you ask for? But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, or perhaps you learned something about the Camry Nightshade as well, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because now that these opportunities are starting to appear again, I'm so excited to have all of you along for the journey. But in the end, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.